You are not imagining it. Your 40s do feel different. Maybe your tolerance has changed, or maybe you snap faster. Maybe connecting with people is harder, or connecting with your partner feels harder, even when nothing is wrong in your relationship. I just want to tell you right away, you're not becoming more difficult. You're not a crazy woman. You're entering a profound physiological transition. And this transition changes how your brain processes stress, connection, and emotional load. Your 40s are not a personality crisis, even though they kind of feel like they are. They're a physiologic shift. It's a decade when your hormones, brain chemistry, stress systems, and sleep all begin to quietly shift and reset in a new way. This happens actually so quietly that a lot of women think that they're becoming less patient or less loving or less capable. The things that used to roll off your back are now hard to do. It's when you notice yourself changing, you realize that all of these parts that are inside you, relationships, hormones, and how you deal with stress in daily life, they're all interconnected. And understanding this is really empowering. It gives us language, it gives us tools, and really it allows us to have compassion for ourselves and really help transform our relationships where the people that are around us don't feel caught off guard, but really help support us during this time of perimenopause. It's a time of transition. Hello. If you're new here, my name is Victoria. I'm a women's health provider, and this is the Life Optimizer podcast, where we work to make health and relationships more simple. I'm really excited about this episode and really about this whole series that I've prepared for you about hormone changes and how they affect our ability to cope, to relate to our loved ones, and really to do life in our 40s. I myself set out to understand why hormones don't just affect our menstrual cycle, but how they influence how I relate to my husband and my kids, how I show up at work, how I deal with stress, how I sleep. And I feel like I'm sharing a secret with my girlfriends that's really transformative, or at least it has been for me. So let's talk about that. Let's get into it. And what am I talking about? Let's talk about the big four hormonal shifts that happen in our 40s. So let's talk about the first hormonal shift that happens. Progesterone declines. And when progesterone declines, it means that we have lower stress resilience, lower ability to deal with stress. And studies show that progesterone declines in our 40s by 75 to 90% over that decade. That's essentially all of it. And progesterone interacts with our GABA system, the system that is a calming system in our brain. And so what research shows is that low progesterone is linked to increased irritability, anxiety, overstimulation, and a reduced ability to deal with stress. So what does that mean for our relationships? In relationships, you may seem more irritable, but really it's your nervous system that has less cushioning, sort of less protection from that extra progesterone in your system that gives you a buffer. Okay. So this is why in our 40s, things like noise or mess or more emotional demand really hit harder and are harder to deal with. Have you ever said to your kids or your spouse or somebody around that was clicking their pen or, making noise that wasn't needed, stop making noise, right? It's like you're on edge and you can't handle that little bit of noise. It's a normal thing that happens where even extra noise is hard for us to deal with. What else happens in our 40s? The other system that changes is our estrogen. And our estrogen doesn't just go down over that decade, it actually becomes really unpredictable. It spikes high, then it drops suddenly. Estrogen is connected to a lot of other hormones, and so it affects how we interact with others. So estrogen affects our serotonin, our dopamine, our oxytocin, and these affect mood regulation, our motivation, our bonding with our friends and family, and even our communication. So when estrogen shifts, it affects our clarity in when we speak. even to that extent. It affects our libido. It affects how our brain interprets emotional cues and how connected you feel with others, because it's not just estrogen in isolation going to your ovaries, it's estrogen that then affects all of these other hormones. And so studies show that those fluctuations in estrogen, right? Estrogen not just declining, but being high one cycle, low another cycle. So it's not just the low estrogen, it's the changes, the swings in the estrogen that really predict swings in our emotions, in our ability to tolerate stress, and predicts conflict in relationships. And I thought when I read that study that that was insane, right? That estrogen that we think only is released in our ovaries and affects us there, actually affects our relationships, or can affect our relationships so much. So what does that look like in relationships? So some weeks you might feel like you're really warm and affectionate, and then other weeks you might feel like you want space. Okay. And I'm not saying that those estrogen fluctuations are going to cause conflict, but they change your internal capacity. They change, how you understand language, how connected you may want to be or not. And so this increases the chance for having a misunderstanding. Okay, what else can change? Well, the third hormonal shift that I want to talk about is how we deal with stress. Women between ages of 35 to 55 carry the highest emotional load of any demographic. Also, that means that we're more stressed than any other time in our life, and we're trying to go through perimenopause and menopause. Awesome. So, that stress leads to high cortisol, and cortisol interacts directly with estrogen and progesterone. And research shows that high cortisol reduces our empathy. It increases the reactivity of our amygdala, and our amygdala is that emotional control center in our brain. And high cortisol also changes how we process social cues. So even understanding somebody's body language might be different when our cortisol is high. So what does that look like in relationships? In relationships, when our cortisol is high, small issues that used to not bother us might feel huge, because our brain is activated faster from stress because of that low progesterone and that variable estrogen that we talked about. Okay. So somebody might be speaking to you in a neutral tone, not necessarily, angry, but also not warm and fuzzy. And we can interpret it as being sharp or short with us, because the amygdala is much more reactive when that estrogen drops. Okay. So we interpret emotional cues more intensely. Okay. What else can happen? The other thing that can happen is we can go from feeling fine, life is really good, everything's good, to feeling activated in seconds. Have you ever felt that? I know I have. Like, I'm doing good, and then all of a sudden, like, whoa, my mood is, I'm on edge. Okay. And so while your partner might still be processing what happened, you are already activated and upset. Okay. And so in literature, that's called HPA axis sensitization. Okay, let's talk about the next hormone change. And this has to do with our sleep that affects our hormones as well. Okay. Even without having the classic night sweats in late perimenopause, which we know disrupt sleep and make you wake up, or, waking up to pee all the time, or other symptoms, we know that even at the beginning of perimenopause, late 30s to early 40s, when progesterone just starts to decrease, and if we add the stress that we talked about, already contribute to having lighter sleep. And sleep research shows that even minor disruptions in sleep increase our emotional reactivity by up to 60%. And so, what does that mean for our relationships? It means that a single bad night of sleep can really change our emotional stability for the entire next day, right? Okay, so let's talk about some real life, examples that I have for when you might see this come up, right? So let's say that, one example is you're doing three things at once. You're working on getting dinner on the table. The kids are all talking to you. Your partner asks you something simple, and you snap, you go off. And you don't snap because you're angry. You snap because your sensory threshold is lower now. Your ability to deal with the noise, with the mess, with the busyness, with doing the three things at once, you used to be able to handle that really easily. And now it's harder for you to take all of that in and stay calm in that whole process. Another example is, everything feels like one more thing being added to your list. So, doing the bills, the cooking, the groceries, it feels like just one more thing to an already long list that feels impossible. And this is that invisible mental load that women carry. And we know that 70% of the mental load of the house women carry. And I talk about, tabs being open in our brain. And so if we think about it, it may feel dramatic that you don't want to add just one more thing, like stopping to pick up the groceries, but you're likely depleted in so many ways, and your hormones aren't able to buffer all that stress that you feel like you just can't add one more thing to your to-do list. Okay. What else can happen? Another example is just feeling more distant or more disconnected. It may feel like you're not wanting or not able to connect with your partner as much. And why would that be? Well, because of that estrogen fluctuating, it can shift how your oxytocin system works. And so, oxytocin is the hormone that supports bonding, affection, closeness. And that means that your desire for connection may rise and fall from week to week. It may change. And so it doesn't mean that you don't love your partner, but that change can change how much you want connection. And so that's something really important for our partners to know. It's not that we don't love them, it's just that our hormones are actually changing. And for us, it's important to know as well and to do things to buffer that and to help support that. What else is what else can be happening in real life, and how can this come up? Well, another thing that can happen is arguments can escalate faster in our 40s. And why is that? Because that lower progesterone means that you have less GABA, right? And less GABA means that you have a decreased ability to kind of put brakes on your emotions. Your emotions feel quicker, as though you light a match and you're in a different state and you feel differently. Okay, so the part that most women never hear is that you are not too emotional. You are not failing. You are not suddenly incapable with dealing with your life. You're not losing it, and you're not crazy. This is very, very normal. And it is so subtle. And all of a sudden, you find yourself in your early 40s, mid 40s, feeling differently and not understanding why. And so like I said, went searching for answers, and the data supports that our hormones affect much more than our menstrual cycle. And so really we're all experiencing a predictable neuroendocrine transition, right? Transition in our endocrine hormonal system and transition in our nervous system. And so what does that mean? That means that this transition affects our stress threshold. It affects our tone, our desire, our need for quiet, our patience, and our ability to really do life and cope with life. And so when I understood this, it really brought me relief and clarity and compassion for myself, and ultimately allowed me to, understand myself deeply, and for me to be able to share that with other women and with my partner so that he could understand what's happening with me as well. Right? Our partners love us so, so much, and they want to be there for us, but it's hard for them when they see us changing and don't know where to go. So let's talk about what actually helps. I want to talk about a couple tools, a couple things that we can do that actually help with this transition. So these are not generic tips. These are physiology supported, research backed tools that can help us shift our nervous system and improve or support our relationship. And I just want to cover 4 of them. As always, this is not an exhaustive list or exclusive list. This is what the data talks about and what research talks about. And I encourage you to pick maybe one small thing, right? What's one thing that you can do today? I always say that potentially can, be supportive to you. Also, if this feels too overwhelming, because we know that this decade is overwhelming just by itself, listen through it, come back to it later. Okay. I don't want this in any way to be an overwhelming thing. And so, the first thing I want to talk about is treating sleep as an intervention for our hormones. Why? Well, sleep regulates how sensitive we are to estrogen. It regulates our stress hormone, or energy hormone, I should say, cortisol. It regulates how emotionally able we are to deal with life, right? And so studies show that when we don't sleep well, our emotional brain, that amygdala, reacts more strongly, and our ability to stay calm and stay like calm and collected really decreases. Okay, so what can we do to help support sleep? So, a couple of things. We can have a wind down ritual that tells our body that we're going to go to sleep. So, what is that? Taking a warm shower before bed, turning down the lights in the house so that we're not exposed to bright light. That tells our melatonin to be released and really helps us wind down and go to sleep. Especially, you want to do this 1 hour before bedtime. I listened to one sleep scientist, Matthew Walker, who said he literally turns off all the lights 1 hour before going to sleep, because how crucial and important this is. What else? Really trying to avoid stimulating content. Things like social media, watching scary movies, shows that really amp us up. He also talks about not doing that, because that then prevents us from having deep sleep and restful sleep. And having a consistent bedtime and wake up time. So going to sleep and going and waking up consistently at the same time every day. I have a whole episode on sleep that you can listen to if you want to. But just think about, that ritual before bed, that wind down ritual before bed, turning down the lights, kind of avoiding lots of stimulation within that 1 hour of bedtime, and then waking up consistently at the same time might be just a couple of things for us to consider. Another tool that we can use is rethinking how we approach relaxation. And something that, I'm reading about is having micro doses of relaxation, or small moments of calm or pauses throughout our day, to decrease feeling overwhelmed. And so during this time, during our 40s, our system doesn't respond to let's just push through, let's just work harder. We actually need short, consistent downshifts. And so studies show that bursts that activate the parasympathetic, or rest and digest branch of our nervous system, really reduce and improve our reduce cortisol and improve our emotional regulation, which is awesome because, you know, bursts meaning small moments of calm. And so they, in these studies, meant short moments of 1 to 3 minutes. So what can we try? We could do 4 by 6 breathing. You breathe in for 4, you breathe out for 6 seconds. You could do a 60-second hug. I have a whole video about that. You can do 2 minutes of just sitting in quiet and having your brain not think about anything. You could do a short walk outside. You can even do like a 10-minute transition time after work, which I know is more than 1 to 3 minutes, but a couple minutes of transitioning between work and home, so that we can kind of reset and downregulate our nervous system before we jump into things happening at home. These are ways for our nervous system to reset and to feel calm, so that we can help our own selves, help ourselves deal with life. Right? So taking 1 to 3 minutes a couple of times through the day, just to say, I'm just going to sit here for 2 minutes after eating lunch or what have you, or I'm going to go for a 5-minute walk. It seems so trivial, but it really helps downshift our nervous system and tell our body that we are safe and we're okay. What else can we do? Instead of absorbing everything ourselves, we can share with our partner. tell them how we're feeling and what's happening for us. So something like, I'm not able to deal with stress right now. I've had, a really stressful day, and I need 5 minutes to, decompress. Or let's talk in 5 minutes. Give me 10 minutes after work so that I can just, like reset my mind. That really helps your partner understand where you're coming from and really strengthens the relationship, instead of us maybe coming in and being short with our kids, short with our partner. Let's just take the 10 minutes. And I'm saying that to myself, of course. Some people sit in their car, some people will go and, like, sit in their closet for 10 minutes just to downshift. But during this time, we don't want to be scrolling social media, because that actually activates us and it offsets our dopamine system. We really want to be doing literally nothing, right? And just telling our partner, hey, I need this. I need 5 minutes of time. The other thing that we can do is we can track our symptoms so that we can understand, what's happening with us. Are you in perimenopause? Are your cycles changing, etc.? And so knowledge helps us remove that feeling of maybe, feeling ashamed for feeling, the way you're feeling, or feeling short with your family, or not being able to keep up, in a meeting, whatever. And so you could track your symptoms in an app, in a calendar, in a notes app, really anywhere. And it gives us an idea of, when we have harder days, what happened that led to it. Maybe we didn't sleep as well, or, just trying to have a sense of, what's happening during our cycle, during our month, that is affecting how we feel. Okay. And because this phase of life can be really confusing, I made a full series of episodes, which this is the beginning of the series, with episodes talking about perimenopause and relationships and easy ways to really help support you in that. So the next episode in the series, I'm going to link up here, and it's talking about in-depth information about perimenopause and relationships. And it's already waiting for you. Just click on the screen and use that. It's so great to spend this time with you today. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to talk to you soon.